Said, you know, this is just the beginning of the conversation. I really like that.
Yeah.
It's good. And speaking about conversations and being social, anybody want to take a guess on how many people we reach through social media using the hashtag BCTECH? How many people?
Audience show of hands, 100,000, 4 million.
Oh my goodness, you guys are
that's
good.
good. That's
You're
pretty
good.
good.
It was
That's
3
pretty-
million. 3 million. So
people,
give yourselves a round of hands. And one of the things we wanted to do was recognize the top 3 people that were most active in social media, and we did that through the stats that were provided by Tradable Bits, one of the sponsors of the event. And then another player, Gusto, which is an app where, do you get this? Have you heard of this app? I met them on.
I've heard. I saw people downloading it backstage.
You did?
Something
You did?
about free drinks.
Yeah, you can send people drinks, food, tickets instantly to their phone, so I can send you drinks. So anyway, they are giving away a free drink to the top 3 social media people. So any minute now, Janny Aragon, Jeff Roby.
First, we'll just go with Janny, Jeff, and Paige.
Why are you afraid they're going to be famous? And they're
you know what? It just seems
Never
nice.
mind. Okay,
Yeah, it just seems
Janny,
nice.
Jeff, and Paige, they've won a free drink. Congratulations. Dawn, do you have a middle name you'd like to share with everybody?
Ellen.
Okay, there we go. I just wanted you to disclose something personal. Okay. Anyways, so, and because I'm such a great girl, I'm going to send you a free drink using the app, because it literally takes me a few seconds. So,
Perfect.
There you go. Yeah,
All right,
there we
and
go.
now we are inviting up.
This is exciting.
Go ahead.
So, back to the show. We've got the author of Smart Citizens and Smarter State. We heard from Beth Noveck earlier. In her recent book, Beth explores the possibilities for innovation and how becoming, sorry guys, I'm tired, Dawn. You read it.
I'm gonna fill in. You do a much
on,
better
Leslie,
radio
I
voice.
need crowd
Become the
energy right
governing
now,
body when they create more open and collaborative institutions and truly use the brain power available to address today's most complex challenges.
Brain power.
Brain
Something
power.
we're all, do you guys feel brain power right now? Beth, I think we need your brain power
Beth,
up on stage
yes.
right now. Come on up. Let's put our hands together for Beth. All right.
Great, thank you very much. It's an honor to be back up here. We had a fabulous panel earlier today talking about big data, talking to 4 different people from 4 sectors about a huge and varied range of technologies that are being impacted by the availability now to process and visualize and collect and make use of big data. And that was really emblematic of this whole conference in a way. An extraordinary diversity of technologies, of innovations and approaches. And I have the enviable task of trying to pull some of this together and talk about what the impact will be for how we govern ourselves, how we run our government, how we manage our society, how we grow our economies, and how really at the fundament, how we make government more effective and democracy stronger using the range and diversity of technologies and approaches that we've heard talked about today. And so it's really very auspicious to talk about this issue in the context of a conference in which we are looking at such a range of approaches. Because there is no one technology, there is no one single approach that's going to enable us to govern ourselves better and realize the solutions to the myriad problems we face in the 21st century. In fact, it's going to be about a variety of technologies. I'm going to try to, boop, any direction I can point this? I'm going to try, there we go. Well, we lost something here. Let's see if we go. I'm going to go back a little bit here. Here we go. Part of that story about how we're going to create a more effective, a better, a more efficient state is the story about data, one that we've talked about over the last 2 days, and especially in the panel that we had this afternoon. And that's about the technologies of big data, but fundamentally underlying it, the policy of access to data and open data. There's a number of things that allows us to do, obviously. It allows us to create a state that is more accountable, that is less corrupt, and that is more efficient. So that when in Mexico they put up the data about the state's educational system and the functioning of its schools, they are able to find 1,442 teachers on the payroll who are all over the age of 105. and all suspiciously have the same birth date and all come from the same region, allowing for that practice to be stopped, to be halted, to save money, and to increase accountability. And we see lots of examples like this, more evidence-based, more data-driven, more fact-based policymaking that becomes possible when we use the technologies of big and open data. Ultimately, what it allows us to do is to spot problems more effectively. So if you're in Christchurch, New Zealand after the earthquake, you can use open data sets, data visualization, and data mining to spot where are the structures and to do the analysis that allows you to know which are the structures that are most at risk of falling down and injuring people and costing lives and well-being, and able to rebuild more effectively and more efficiently. If you're in Singapore, you can better spot the clusters of dengue fever, the mosquito breeding grounds, both using data collected by the government and data reported by citizens from the bottom up, allowing the state to stop a scourge in its tracks. It allows you then, when you can spot the problems, of course, to better be able to enforce those and to regulate and solve those problems, right? So it allows you, if you're in New York City, to take the data that we have, not simply about fire, but about apartment dwellings, who's living in which apartment. Because it turns out when you have too many people living in an apartment in an illegal conversion, that those apartments are more at risk, are more likely of catching fire and of costing the lives not only of the people in the apartments, but also the firefighters who go in to save them. In Canada, for example, take the data about the charitable sector, the T3010 form from the tax authorities. Canada has, as you know better than I do, the second largest nonprofit sector per capita after Denmark. And so by making that data available in 2013, the government and the charitable sector itself is better able to police itself, to regulate itself, and to realize more value for citizens and for taxpayers. When we can use data, particularly open data, and make it more available, we not only enable government to do its job better, we enable government to do a very different job. And that is to ensure that data is open so that you and I can each make better decisions, more informed decisions about our own lives. So when we have access to data, we can then use that and our new devices that we carry. It's our Apple Watch or perhaps our Android Watch. Either platform now today works. And I can take the data that I gather about myself. How much coffee I drank today, too much. How many steps I walked, not enough. I'll keep going with my exercise here. And I can feed that back in through my watch to allow researchers and scientists to collect data and run clinical trials on cardiovascular disease, on Alzheimer's, on other conditions, using data that I am providing, not only that the state is providing, to enable me in turn to make better decisions about my own health and my own well-being. There are lots of stories like this that are at the intersection between public and private, between universities and government, between business and individuals, that are allowing us potentially to solve problems in new ways and in more collaborative ways. The kind of collaboration that we're seeing happening in the hallways today between the different sectors that are represented here at this event. It allows us, of course, to potentially create jobs and to realize greater economic growth. I'm pleased to say that Canada has now just announced the start of the new Open Data 150 study, a study of companies in Canada using open data as the core of their new business model. Data that's provided by governments at the federal level, of which here there's over 250,000, 250,000 data sets now available, but also at the regional and the local level, to grow their businesses, to create jobs, and to create new products. Some of that benefit and that growth comes not just for big businesses, but for startups and for small businesses. So one of the things that's happening in New York City is the creation of the Business Atlas, the use of open data to create a tool to help small and medium-sized enterprises, open data enterprises or not, to make decisions about where to site their businesses, where to find their workers, and about the conditions in a given neighborhood. It brings together a variety of different data sets to help business owners, if you're a chef or a jewelry store, it doesn't matter, to make a more informed decision about where to grow your business. So again, whether your business is about data or your business is about something entirely different, open data and big data can help to make the difference in how you grow and how you create jobs. The story about open data, though, and about data, especially as a tool of policy making and of government, is that what it fundamentally does is it creates a conversation between business and citizens around how to solve problems. It's about engaging people. So when British Columbia puts out its data and Open Data BC, the effort of a variety of nonprofits and individuals in BC use that data, what they're fundamentally doing is putting a lot of eyeballs together on a problem that would not otherwise have gotten attention, right? So it's about the collaboration between business and government. And what we heard a lot of earlier today was that it's not going to be about the technology. It's not how quantum and big your computing is. It's about getting more eyeballs together to focus on the problem that you're trying to solve that's ultimately going to lead to the better solutions. So it's Open 17, a competition that's now being run by a variety of different groups, including One.org and the Center for Citizen Cyberscience out of Geneva, that's trying to take the Millennium Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and crowdsource the development of solutions to those approaches, trying to realize that these are not solutions that will only be created by government from the top down, but by all of us from the bottom up, institutions and individuals working together to solve our hardest problems enabled by data. The data is only going to become more accessible and more available with policy drivers, with the ability for us to have access to that data, to share it in ways that are respectful of personal privacy and civil liberties on the one hand, but that also realize the importance of making that data available in comprehensive and in accelerated formats to allow people to make use of it. And to make use of it for a variety of different purposes, as we can see. Whether it's about driving economic growth, whether it's about enabling personal choice or making government work better, or really just enabling the conversation between government and citizens, open data combined with the technologies of big data has a lot of potential value to offer. Value that we still have to understand, and there is work just beginning to try to understand what is actually the impact, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, but for today, to driving and investing in the availability of data from government. But that's only part of the story. Part of the way that we solve the problems of our age is not just by sharing data from government, it's also making more available the data that companies hold, as well as individuals hold, that we can make use of. So data collaboratives is the term that we frequently like to use. Some people call it corporate data philanthropy, for when companies make data available and share it with researchers, with government, in order that we can solve the challenges of our age. And we're seeing lots of examples of the ways in which these sharing relationships are beginning to emerge, particularly in the humanitarian space, in the climate change space, where the data that we need is not going to be collected only by government, but may be collected, yes, by the individual citizen scientists on the ground, but also by the companies who collect that data for their own business purposes, but for which there is no impediment to them making that data available to all of us for the larger social good. So data is a big piece of it. Data from companies, data from government, data from you and me that we collect on our Fitbits, on our watches, that are going to help us create a healthier, more sustainable, better society. But that's half the story with regard to technology and how it's going to improve government and strengthen democracy. The other half of this story is really about us. And it's about the tools of collective intelligence and communication that allow us to help make government smarter and more effective. It's about the transition that technology is enabling from closed-door governing by a handful of elites in back rooms to open government, where each of us can play a role in helping to inform how government works and to solve challenges, informed by data, but also informed by the experience and wisdom that we each can bring to bear. This is part of the idea behind why Bill Gates, in his open letter on the Gates Notes blog last year in 2015, called for the creation of a global citizen database to combat global poverty. He said we need to create a database that allows each of us to lend our talents and abilities, our skills, our wisdom to solving the challenge of global poverty. Because, and this is at the fundament of the whole notion of an open government, the knowledge that we have in our society, the wisdom that we have, is not sitting within institutions. You know the famous quote about business, the smartest person works for someone else. Well, that holds true for government, of course. And that knowledge is widely dispersed in society. This is why in São Paulo in Brazil recently, when the city government, the municipal government decided it wanted to get smarter about technology and innovation, it said we don't have all the answers ourselves. That knowledge sits dispersed within our own community. Look outside the door here at the universities who are here, the entrepreneurs, the venture capitalists who know a ton about tech and innovation. So what did they do in São Paulo? They set up an open government university where citizens sign up to teach government officials about tech and innovation and problem solving. This past November, they got started. They launched with 24 courses. They have more underway, and they're expecting to train 50,000 people in the very near future by not having civil servants or professional civil service training colleges do the teaching, but citizens do the teaching. The point is we also need to focus on the technologies not only of big data, but the technologies of collective intelligence and communication that allow institutions to transform how they work, from being closed to being open, from hearing the good ideas and know-how that each of us can bring to bear. There's already some of this work underway. So right in Bangalore, like in Brazil, they are turning to citizens and asking for good ideas about how to improve their cities. Right? In New Brunswick, just a few weeks ago, they launched the new Social Innovation Lab in New Brunswick to allow government and citizens to co-create solutions together. In Madrid this week, they are asking for your comments in mind to help improve the ordinance on transparency for the city of Madrid. And British Columbia has been far out ahead for quite some time now under the leadership of David Hume in asking citizens for their input on everything from distracted driving to the other issues that are facing the city, get comments in from citizens to help improve how the city makes policy. The technology has also been out there, not only to ask people for their comments for how they feel or even what they know about making a policy, but to solve really hard problems. So in the US government, the law was changed in 2010 to allow for the offering of prize-backed challenges. And the platform challenge.gov was stood up 5 years ago to allow federal agencies to ask citizens for help solving really hard problems, not just to give a comment, but to actually try to address problems like how do I remove the salt water from seawater to enable greater use of improved development, improved agriculture in developing countries. 450 different challenges have been run over the last 5 years. Some of those give the prize of a large amount of money. Some of them you get to shake the hand of the president. Some of them you just get the glory of having won the prize. But what it does is to ask people for what they know and how they can help. The challenge, though, that we face is that we will not transform in any fundamental or real way how we govern. We will never get from closed door to open government if all that we do, though, is to ask people, hey, anyone out there with a good idea? A prize helps to attract people. Social media surely brings down the cost of making sure that you know about the opportunity to participate. Social media allows the media, in turn, to pick up on the question of, what is distracted driving and how can we solve it and improve the problem. But what we need as the next step in this revolution, this e-government revolution, the transition from closed to open, is the use of matching technologies that allow us to match people to opportunities to serve. You can think of it a little bit like Tinder for government, right? We use a lot of, and I'm only half joking, right? We use a lot of these matching technologies to find a date. We're using a lot of them now to try to find a job, right? There are great startups that are out there that are trying to use data about what we know and can do to help us find the right job opportunity for us, or the right husband, or the right wife, or the right mate in some way, or the right hookup if you're Tinder. But what technology in the next few years is going to allow us to do, by making what we know more searchable, is going to allow us to get matched not just to the job and to the date, but to the volunteer opportunity and to the service opportunity, if our government institutions are able to take advantage of this new opportunity to get at what we know. LinkedIn, of course, is the most famous example, right? It's the way that we make searchable our diplomas and credentials. So instead of sitting in a drawer somewhere, the diploma that I got now sits on a website that is searchable, allowing you to find me and something about what I know. Badging diversifies the kinds of experience and expertise that is searchable now, right? So instead of just knowing where I went to school, I have badges that you can find and make searchable, which will tell you how many levels. In fact, I think I am now 6% fluent in Spanish, according to the badges that I have received from the Duolingo app. And the Mozilla Open Badging System and the standard around open badges are helping to ensure that more of these credentials that we're developing, whether it's learning a language on Duolingo or answering questions on Stack Exchange or selling more stuff on eBay, for all of these things we are getting badges that become searchable indicia of what we know. And it's not just traditional credentials, right? It's not just sort of elite indicia of the degrees we got from universities. It's also about other kinds of expertise and knowledge. So VivoWeb now has about 200,000, in this case, academic professionals who are indexed not based on where they went to school, but based on what they write about, what they've published and who cited them, like a lot of university-based research networking sites do. But there are other sites besides that allow us to search for and make searchable our lived experience. In Wales, they have a platform called Wisdom Bank that the community has set up in the county of Torfaen in Wales to index not where you went to school, but whether you started a business, how long you've been in business, what kind of practical skills you have that you may be able to use to impart knowledge and help to someone else. So we're just at the beginning of seeing how these technologies are enabling us to target, to match the demand for expertise to the supply of it. First, starting with the civil service. So if there are public institutions like the World Bank Group, which just this past year have launched something, an expert network system like this, they call it Skill Finder, that indexes the skills of 27,000 people who work at the World Bank or used to work at the World Bank or who are consultants to the World Bank. And they are experimenting with using it to help the bank do its job better. Tied to the expert network, this ability to search for expertise is a kind of help desk, which helps you broker the finding of the experts that you need. But again, it goes beyond the open call. Hey, anyone out there who can help me, to targeting the search to make that engagement more meaningful and useful. In Newfoundland, they are actually rolling out something similar in the Policy NL site, where they are again indexing the skills and expertise of civil servants to help achieve the Blueprint 2020 mandate of making the civil service here more expert and more knowledgeable by connecting people to one another. And in my lab at the GovLab, we've been experimenting with creating platforms and experimenting with the right techniques that we can use to help make the expertise of civil servants more visible, more searchable, to accelerate the learning one person to another. But connecting civil servants is only half the story. Obviously, we want to be able to connect public sector officials to private sector officials to make the way that government works more informed and more agile. Right? It can't just be about looking up someone you know in the Rolodex and talking to the same old people. We can't rely only on the serendipity of coming to a fabulous conference like this and maybe running into somebody who can transform our lives. Those interactions are important. But the hope is that we can do a better job of targeting and finding what people know. In Spain, the startup political party Podemos, which now controls the mayoralty of both Barcelona and Spain and has achieved representation in the national parliament, is building something called the Banco de Talentos, the talent bank, again to try to index and make searchable the skills of its members so that they can be tapped and leveraged. We heard talk yesterday from the Premier and again today from David about the BC Developers Exchange, a fabulous experiment with reaching out to and targeting the skills of technical folk in British Columbia and attracting them to work on hard problems that matter that are faced by the government. Again, doing a better job of trying to accelerate that matching to solve difficult problems. So what this is really about, whether we're talking about the data or whether we're talking about crowdsourcing and citizen engagement or whether we're talking about matching, these really require a fundamental rethinking of how we do engagement, right? It's about going from mass-based engagement to targeted engagement. Moving away from the world, like this is an example of countless things like it. This is the example from Paris of, hey, anybody out there have an idea, right? I have an idea. That's not all that useful to policymakers who have a short amount of time and not enough hours in the day, hard problems to work on, who need help in very specific ways. So we need to start thinking about what each of us can do to change that equation, right? We need as individuals to make our expertise more searchable. We need to put ourselves out there and put ourselves up in line, online, and make others aware of the fact that we want to help. As companies, we can help to use the same HR data that we collect for internal purposes, for external purposes, to enable the matching of employees for volunteer, for civic, and for democratic engagement purposes. But ultimately, what we're going to need is government to be willing to ask the hard questions, to ask for help in new ways. So this is an example I use all the time because I love it so much, because for me, it captures the essence of what's possible. When the fire department in San Ramon, California creates an app using open data that creates a feed of the emergency calls. There's a similar kind of app in London called by the London Air Ambulance Corps. There are ones emerging in other places in the world. They're now in about 1,400 communities in the United States. So what PulsePoint does is they register and they target people in the general public who have knowledge of CPR. It's not everybody, it's not the open call. What they do is they look for people who have a specific skill and they register them. And then when a 911, an emergency call comes in with somebody having a heart attack and you are next to or near that person, your cell phone goes off with an alert that says somebody near you having a heart attack. The faster somebody gets bystander CPR, the faster somebody comes to their aid, the double, triple the chance of survival for that victim. And what happens is that government, instead of looking like this, these are the police and fire department, the first response services that are available, begins to look like this. This is the coverage that becomes possible. So in just the last few years of their existence, they have been activated over 7,000 times, saving thousands of lives as a result, augmenting government because of the collaboration between first responders and citizens in a targeted fashion using new technology to solve the problem of saving people's lives and reducing the risks of heart attacks. This is a hard transition to make. El Bulli, formerly the #1 restaurant in the world in the hills of Spain, used to close its doors 6 months out of every year to develop the menu for the next 6 months. So you could only get a table for 6 months and then they would close and run experiments. Government doesn't work like that. The economy doesn't work like that. We don't get to close for 6 months out of the year. We have to re-engineer the plane while flying it. We need to leverage the expertise that's out there to solve the hard problems of our day. In Ecuador, the city of Quito is sitting next to a volcano that hasn't erupted in 150 years, and now it's spewing ash. So what are they doing? They're doing two things. First, they have begun crowdsourcing from all over the world. They are engaging with, not with an open call, but by using technology to target the people in Iceland and the Philippines and San Francisco and elsewhere who have dealt with disaster relief and recovery, to help them accelerate their ability to prepare. Secondly, they are developing a database of citizen skills so that when the time comes and they need it, their talented citizenry who are there, but whom they won't otherwise be able to locate or mobilize. They will be able to know where are the doctors, where are the engineers, where are the nurses, so that they can come to the aid of their fellow citizens. This is what government in the future looks like. It's about using the platforms that we have available to us, informed by new data, to target the expertise, to target the human capital that we have within our society and among ourselves to solve the problems of our time. This I would like to put to you is the opportunity that's possible today. That's possible when you have the kind of collaboration between and across sectors, the bringing together of the different technologies that we see represented out in this trade fair here, of data, of big data, of open data, of crowdsourcing, collective intelligence. All of these must be brought together if we're to achieve a better and more effective government and a stronger democracy. Thank you.
Great, Beth. I love this.
That was inspiring, Beth.
Very inspiring. Thank you. It was a wonderful way to end off the day. But before we let you go, because I know you're going to do some book signing soon.
Great.
But we do have some questions, if you wouldn't mind.
I don't know if I have answers, but I'm happy to entertain as many as we can do, and we'll be brief.
We'll give it a shot. Citizenship has always been about voting. Does big data render geographic boundaries obsolete and make citizenship global?
So it's an interesting question. Does citizenship has always been about voting. That is true. We have, and that is really what we're talking about here, is that we have been content for far too long with a very anemic view of what it means to be a citizen, right? It's about going to the polling booth once every 4 years, maybe if we're lucky once every year for a local election, in order to elect other people to govern for us. And what we know because of the technological environment in which we live, what we know because of the amazing innovations that we're seeing from the students in British Columbia out there today, is that each of us possesses expertise and talent that we can bring to bear. If only we had institutions that knew how to leverage that kind of human capital. So it's really about fundamentally, and I'm glad this question got asked, it's really not about the technology, it's about fundamentally rethinking our conception of citizenship. Not as a passive thing we do of watching the people who govern us, but participating and joining in solving the problems that we face. If we can leverage these new technologies, we can do that in ways that speak to what we know and can do and what our talents are and our interests are, and participate not in a one-size-all process like voting that's limited to the geographic boundaries in which we sit, but that allows us to solve the problems and work on the problems that interest us and that speak to us and that we care about.
Beth, that's great. Beth, what are you covered a lot of ground today, and it was inspiring. What are your 3 favorite examples of areas or outcomes that you would want to call attention to and encourage people to study and research a bit more?
Oh. So standing on one foot, the 3 favorite examples.
Yeah. If we're looking here in BC for models of excellence and the things that you covered off today, tell us 3 things we should go deeper.
All right, well, some of those models are in BC. They're not elsewhere. They're going on here. So number 1, BC has been in the lead in terms of opening up government and asking citizens not just what they feel, but what they know about how to solve problems. And I think that in itself is an incredibly important model. But we have to do a better job of studying at how to do that and how to do that well. So I think the second example, and I love the Pulse Point example for that reason, and I overuse it because it's so profound in terms of the way that it saves lives, is that we need to do a better job of, if you will, marketing to people, of targeting people so they know about the opportunity to participate. Because I can run an open call and I can say, hey, I need help as the government trying to figure out how to solve a really hard problem, be it climate change or distracted driving. But maybe the people who really have those answers aren't going to know about the opportunity. Challenge.gov is a great second example I would give you because it uses the prize to attract people. But the third example of impact is the one that we're just beginning to see. It's that World Bank example. It's that ability to say, I want to reach out to these 10 people because they are more likely than others to have the answers. It's not to the exclusion of other people participating. It's just really a better way to market, if you will. Look, it's worth as we end to saying, and every business out here knows that they have to use data to understand who their customer base is. You don't want to sell toothpaste to the person who's not going to buy it. You want to sell toothpaste to the person who's most likely to buy it at the time in which they're thinking about brushing their teeth, right? So we want to be able to do some of the same thing for government, a better job of just understanding who's out there and who's more likely to have the know-how, the smarts, the credentials, the lived experience, the talent, and the passion to allow us to solve problems. So prize-backed challenges, open policy making, prize-backed challenges, targeted marketing for democracy.
Beth, that was a wonderful session. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really well done. All right, Lindsay.
Oh,
we're back.
We are back. We are back. And the time, it's almost